And you know, I always like to say different horses for different courses. And I think it's very important that, we have diverse technologies available for the ever-growing demand, in the energy storage field. And yeah, I would really, appreciate, once we get a little bit of discussion going now. So I'm wondering, when you work with, with the end user, what is your experience there in that field? Are you able to get the point across and are the users, respective, or they're just happy to check off the check marks whether you have a fire preparation system or not? You have like a $6 million system. If you spend $1 million in fire separation, it would be much better to spend more on energy storage. That's kind of my thinking there.
Look, I think we as an industry have gone through a lot of transformation. And I think one of the issues that we have is when we go through transformation is that we tend to wait for a problem before we kind of transform ourselves. I think we're already starting to see fire as a big issue. I mean, I was there in the New York Best Conference, and the opening keynote, they spent about 3 hours with all the fire marshals coming and talking about all sorts of things that we're going through. And look, it's not to say that it's the be all end all, but I think there's different use cases for different technologies. There is no single magic silver bullet that we need. And when you look at stationary energy storage, when you look at installations that are closer to where things, a lot of people living, etc., there's a role for the zinc-based technologies and other long-duration technologies to play a role. So you really don't need to overfit these things with something that can go in a car.
I think it really depends on who you're talking to, right? In an urban environment, it's kind of pretty close to the be-all, end-all. If you're in a desert for solar, maybe they aren't quite so intent on that. But generally, I think it comes up with a lot of customers. And I think more and more, there's sort of a realization that this isn't going away. It's not just a growing pain that they're going to kind of build their way out of in a year or two. If anything, the kind of really high capacity form factors that lithium ion is working towards makes that manufacturing challenge even harder. So yeah, I think, it's definitely a pretty considerable consideration, varies a little bit by customer, but increasingly, I think there's sort of an understanding that it's going to be here at least for the medium term and probably for the long term.
I also think that its availability. It's also like if we as Zinc developers, make our systems available and we have all these benefits, with all the demand, we should have no problems finding users.
Well, I mean that's a really good point that I think you've been making is, broadly speaking, we need to have diverse supply chains. We need to have a diversity of technologies providing grid services. I think if COVID taught us anything, it's that we've been heavily reliant on extremely fragile supply chains. And within the lithium space in particular, we've been relying on one technology where you can only get materials from very specific places. And if you've got supply chain disruptions, well, we've got a big problem. And so through diversity of technologies that we're offering out there, Zinc being one of the key ones, we can help provide a more resilient, energy secure grid.
You make a good point here. And I was actually at the DOE conference last week or 2 weeks ago, and there was actually this point made that you only value up to 4 hours, and anything longer than 4 hours doesn't really add any value to a system, which is a problem, which I guess gets back into Alex's field there of policy making, because if we don't value long duration storage properly, then it's going to be difficult to make the business case for it. But that's what the LDES Council is working on, I believe. Maybe you want to have some comment on that, Alex.
No, I mean, absolutely. Around the world, we are seeing challenges around definitions and assumptions about what storage is needed, and policymakers and regulators then designing their rules and frameworks around those assumptions. And part of our mission, part of our role is to say, look, we don't have arbitrary cutoffs at 4 hours or 8 hours or what have you. You've got to look at your system need, understand, especially with the increasing deployment of wind and solar, what you're actually going to need to keep the lights on.
What type of separator is used in the UAP batteries? That's one of the questions.
Sure. So we use a traditional battery cellophane plus 2 other proprietary separators. So it's really a 3-layer separator in between the cathode and anode.
I really enjoyed, the webinar. It was a great contribution, and happy to introduce, 4 zinc technologies, all different from, any duration to, up to hundreds of hours. If you have, that's great. Thank you very much.